In the last one, we tested that we could check that a session was started. In this one, we're going to go one step further and we're going to test that we can actually start a session. Choose high definition for the best viewing experience, and if you'd like to join a growing group of software developers and take your skills to a new level, all you need to do is subscribe, click the little notification icon, and welcome. Okay, so there's a couple of things to consider in this one. First, we'll just sketch out the skeleton of our test, and then we'll write some of our considerations in the comments in that test, which is always a good, easy way to guide yourself. So, test pub, and we're going to call this a session can be started. Okay, and so there's going to be sort of three logic paths here thinking about this. We have the isStarted property on our session class. So the first check we can do, or the first thing that our start method can do, is actually check and see if we don't already have a session started by checking that property, because we know if that property is set to true, our class is in the same scope as the code which is using it, so we're pretty much 99% sure that a session is started if that property is set to true. Our other scenario is a session could be started from another part of the code which is in a different scope than our session class, and so we need to actually check that a session is started, and the way that we can do that is by using the same check that we did here, session status. So we can actually first check if the property is started is set to true. If so, then we can just exit our start method. Then we can check this. If the session status is PHP session active, then we know that session's running. We just need to then set our property to true and then exit the start method. And then our third logic path will be that neither the start property is set to true, the session status isn't PHP session active, so then we're pretty confident that we don't have a session running. We need to start one and set the session is started property to true. So sounds like quite a lot when I actually talk about it, but in reality it's just 3 steps. So go ahead and sketch out this test. So setup, we can pretty much copy the same setup from here. In fact, we can copy the exact same setup, which is to have a session class. The act part of our method, or the do something, as we've decided that we're going to call this, do something, is that we need to start a session. So that will be session start. Okay, we don't have that method yet. And then we need to make an assertion, and we can perform the same assertion. So last time we asserted that the session is not started. This time, because we're starting a session, we're going to assert that a session is started. Right, assert true. Okay, this assert true session is started. Now, again, we're going to take a bit of a test-driven approach, so I'm actually going to run this test, see what the failure is, and that'll give me a clue as to what I should do next. Okay, so I'll just scroll this up, make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so PHP or vendor bin PHPUnit tests session test, and I just want to run this second test, which is actually called a session can be started. I shall copy that, and then if I just want to run a single test, it's filter, paste that in there, and we'll run that. Okay, and so this is exactly what I thought we'd get. Call to undefined method app session start, because we don't have a start method yet. Let's go over to our session class and create that method, and we'll just put some comments in there just to guide us as to what our steps are, what our logic is. So session, here we'll create a public function start. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. First thing we're going to check is the isStarted property, does that evaluate to true? If so, we need to return true because a session is running. We're confident a session is running. If not, we need to make a check that session status is PHP session active. If it is active, then we need to set is started to true and return true. If it isn't set to PHP session active, then we know that we don't have a session running, and so we hit our third scenario where if session status is not PHP session active, then we know that we're now at this third scenario. We need to start a session with session start, set is started to true and return true. Okay, so let's start running this. If this is started, we're just going to return true. So each step of the way, each line of code that I'll add, I'll actually go back and run the test and see how we're getting on. Now, we haven't started a session, so I'm expecting this to not return true, and in that case our assertion will fail. Okay, so failed asserting that false is true because we don't actually have a session running. Let's now check this condition, and what we can do is just grab this . So if session status equals PHP session active, this is started equals true, and we'll just return true. Okay, now I'm pretty sure that our session status is not PHP session active, so I'm going to run the test again, and I'm expecting to see the same message really. So I'll run the test. Again, failed asserting that false is true. So we know we definitely don't have a session running. Let's now go and start one. So we need to do session start. Okay, you can pass in some options to this. We may have a look at that later on, but I don't have any options to pass in. So we're just going to start the session, set this is started to true, and then I'm just going to return true. Okay, good. So this time I'm expecting that our test will pass because I've started a session, I've set the is started property to true, and we've returned true. So let's give this a go. Okay, and because we're returning true, we can probably test one more condition here. And so what I'll do is I'll actually grab the return value of this, and we'll call this session status, and we'll also do another assert true assertion. So this assert true session status. Okay, we'll run the test again. So this time I should see one test, two assertions. Okay, great stuff. One test, two assertions. All good. So I hope that all made sense. What we did was we've created a session class. We've actually started the session using our own session method. We looked at 3 different scenarios on where, why, and how we shall start a session if we need to, and then we've just tested a couple of assertions. Okay, good stuff. Let's move on. If you've enjoyed this video and you'd like YouTube to show you more of my content, all you need to do is subscribe and click the little notification icon. I release new recordings every few days. Details of my schedule can be found on the community tab of my YouTube channel homepage.